Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Cybersecurity Can Also Be a Profit Center, sponsored by ECI with participation from Verizon. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you today, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green Resource List widget. Towards the end of today's presentation, we'll ask for your feedback. A survey will pop open on your screen and will only take 1 minute to complete. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event. It can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Editor-in-Chief, Ray LeMaitre. Ray?
Thanks, Hannah. Yes, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. Cybersecurity can also be a profit center, like Hannah said. This involves the participation and sponsorship of ECI and also the participation of Verizon to give us a great perspective. So let's take a look and see who we've got talking on today's webinar. So my name is Ray LeMaitre. I'm the Editor-in-Chief at Light Reading. I'm acting as the moderator today. Now I'm going to introduce you to our experts who are going to be delivering the useful insight for you today. So first up, I want to introduce Jonathan Homer from ECI. Hi, Jonathan. Please introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about your role at ECI.
Oh, hi, Ray. Thank you very much. Well, I'm Jonathan Homer. I can gladly say I'm in the third country of my telecom career, spanning Canada, the USA, and now Israel. We have some extraordinary technology at ECI, and I'm happy to play a role in making sure the value of this technology and the solutions they entail are well understood by the marketplace.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Jonathan, and welcome. We also from ECI, we have Yaron Bilus, who's the VP of Cyber Security. Hi, Yaron. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your role at ECI.
Hi, Ray. My name is Yaron Bilus, and I'm the Vice President of Cybersecurity at ECI. I spent my entire career over the last 30 years in making the cyberspace a better place. A place to conduct business and pleasure, available from everywhere to everyone at any time, secure, performing, and scalable. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Yaron. And also very pleased today to have John Loveland from Verizon. Hi, John. Please tell us a little bit about your role at Verizon.
Hi, Ray. Thanks very much. Yes, John Loveland here from Verizon Enterprise Services. So I focus on delivering or assisting our company in delivering products and services to customers to help them better manage their security environment. So we're a very large managed security services company. We provide all means of professional services and consulting around cybersecurity. And our focus is really in helping companies create more adaptable security postures. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. No, and I think we all know that cybersecurity is just about the hottest topic in the industry at the moment, and that's why we have this webinar today. So let's move on and just have a quick overview of today's agenda. I'm going to do an incredibly brief introduction. Then I'm going to be handing over to our experts from ECI and Verizon to give their perspectives on this incredibly important topic. And as Hannah mentioned earlier on, at the end of today's webinar, we will have a question and answer session where we can take the questions from you, the audience, and put those to today's speakers. Now, this is an incredibly important part of the webinar. This is an opportunity for you to get direct feedback from industry experts. So please do take the opportunity and put your questions forward to today's speakers. So let's take a very quick look at why this topic is important. Well, I think as we all know, cybersecurity very high now on every company's agenda. And we can see from the cadence and breadth of the threats that are reported each day now, that just highlights how important cybersecurity has come to every single kind of company throughout the world. Now, enterprises need to be connected and increasingly digital to compete and remain relevant. Across every single vertical around the world, enterprises are introducing digital strategies. But they're also at the same time facing key challenges. Key amongst those is having the appropriate IT and digital skills to be able to see their strategies through. And particularly with relevance to this webinar, an understanding of cybersecurity and its potential impact and ramifications is a major challenge. There's still a great deal of education to be done in the market. At the same time, communication service providers are seeking new revenue streams. And we can already see, and we're going to hear a bit later from John at Verizon, how cybersecurity is no longer just a cost center, but it's actually now an enabler of digital business transformation. It's actually an area where new revenues can be driven. So what can be done to meet some of these challenges? Well, enterprises of all types need to address the cybersecurity challenge. Sticking your head in the ground is not a very good or viable strategy. And SMBs in particular have the toughest task as they grapple more than their larger peers with budget, skills, and manpower. But there is a solution out there. The introduction of cloud services and the implementation of virtualization technologies has opened up a market for managed enterprise services that do not burden enterprises with costly, numerous boxes as much as they have done in the past. And we can also already see, rather, from some of the industry statistics that enterprises are grasping onto this. And according to IDC, by 2020, more than 25% of enterprises are expected to secure their IT architectures through cloud-hosted or security-as-a-service opportunities. Now, NFV, Network Functions Virtualization, advances in analytics, next-gen security tools, and customer-friendly interfaces are helping to make managed security services a viable solution to address those opportunities and those challenges. So, and that's what today's webinar is all about, and we're going to hear some of the details. Before, though, we get to our first industry expert, I want to invite you, the audience, to get involved in terms of an audience poll. We like to make these webinars as interactive as possible, and we really like to hear your views. So here's the first of two audience polls from today. So the first question is, as a business, which of the following statements best reflects the suitability and cost of your current cybersecurity protection? So as a business, which statement best reflects the suitability and cost of your current cybersecurity protection? So you can see there are 4 options there. So take a quick read through those and see which one best matches up with your company at the moment. And we'll give everybody a decent chance to answer before we look at the feedback and the answers coming from you, the audience. And also, just a quick reminder here: please do take this opportunity as well to get your questions in for today's expert speakers. Okay, I think that gives us enough time for everybody to have voted. So let's take a look at how people have voted today. So the question, as a business, which of the following statements best reflects the suitability and cost of your current cybersecurity protection? So it's a very even split, actually. The equal highest responses with nearly 30% each, where we receive good protection, but costs are always higher than budgeted. And equally, the answers came in for there are holes in our protection, but we're unable to spend more to cover them. That's followed closely by there are holes in our protection, and we're continually spending more money to try and cover them. And finally, at almost 18% of today's respondents are saying that they receive good protection at a reasonable cost. Now, Jonathan from ECI, do these audience poll results come as a surprise, or is this kind of what you expected from this kind of question?
It's actually quite in line with what we expected, and I think the way I would read this is that 82% of the respondents do not believe they receive good protection at a reasonable cost, but the way they don't believe that they're receiving the good protection at a reasonable cost varies, again, depending on that. But that's the main message that we see, and that's very, very consistent with what we're seeing in the marketplace.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, and in fact now this brings us to the point where I hand over to you, Jonathan, for the first part of our expert presentations. So over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ray. Before I begin, just a couple of words about ECI. We are a global company, although I think most of the attendees in this conference are from North America, where we have a slightly smaller presence. So just to give a couple of words about our company, we are a leading provider worldwide of elastic network solutions comprising networking, SDN, NFV, and cybersecurity solutions. We have over 250 customers in more than 70 countries, and we've been operating for more than 50 years. Today, our focus is going to be on how we provide service providers with a managed cybersecurity service that they can deliver to their business customers, which offers these customers a superior protection while increasing service provider revenues and profits, resulting in a true win-win situation. So, what is the problem? I think Ray started it, and maybe I can put a bit more flavor on it. Businesses clearly are heavily dependent on their IT infrastructure, and they're well aware of the risks associated with cybercrime, including leakage of intellectual property, stolen personal data, sabotage of their IT infrastructures, and accordingly, they all are investing today in cybersecurity to protect themselves. But like water flowing around rocks and through crevices, hackers are continually finding new ways to expose existing and zero-day vulnerabilities and are becoming better coordinated in creating multi-vector attacks. Accordingly, we're ending up in a situation of a vicious cat-and-mouse kind of game, where hackers are continually finding new ways to attack, and the mouse being the businesses are continually having to sort of cover up and diverting money into protecting themselves rather than spending this money on business growth. So what is the real nature of the problem that we're facing today? What is the reason for the fact that we have this type of cat and mouse game? So from a business perspective, to maintain adequate security requires continual and often heavy investments in an architecture. We call this a monitoring and prevention architecture. It's composed of prevention tools, which we see here at the bottom of the architecture, a security operations center, and then security analysts that are manning that security operations center. So to understand the shortcomings, let's analyze this particular architecture. So at the bottom of the architecture, we see multiple security prevention tools. I sort of regard this as a Swiss Army knife of tools. But like a Swiss Army knife, we're also ending up in a situation where we have Swiss cheese, where each security tool can decrease the surface area of attack, yet multiple holes in that surface area remain. Moreover, these tools that we employ today are quite static with limited abilities. They rely mainly on signature, analysis, and deviations from policy, and they don't possess any true analytical capabilities. In addition, each tool largely works today as a silo without coordination with other tools. So in order to provide adequate security, the architecture today relies largely on human experts to analyze patterns, manually correlate information, fill the gaps, and identify threats and attacks. So what they do is they leverage the information coming from the tools to the Security Information and Event Management, or SIM, and conduct their security investigations. But the biggest challenge that probably exists today is starting from the top in terms of the information deluge, which is arriving at the Security Operations Center, which is presenting a challenge to the security analysts. Based on a research study of 630 enterprises of about 1,000 employees each, it was found that each organization coming into their SOC, they're getting approximately 17,000 events or alerts per week. And the security analysts really were only able to investigate about 4% of these. So just based on these numbers per se, we can see that this kind of architecture and the Security Operations Center is really not effective. It ends up wasting, if you sort of calculate that into hours and dollars, about 21,000 hours of analyst time that are really chasing false leads, and roughly about $1.5 million per year in terms of inaccurate intelligence. And the main reason for this, when we sort of step back and take a look at it, is that today's tools are not really focused on identifying attacks. They're focused on identifying events. And because no one wants to make a mistake, even remotely suspicious events are flagged. So if we take a little bit deeper look into the current situation, we can see the event flow and how things work. It's a three-step process, the way we've broken it down, starting with threat detection. What this does, it leverages the suite of standalone prevention tools and the traditional SIM, and gathers and analyzes this large amount of logs and events, overwhelming, inaccurate, and often non-actionable. This presents the set of information to the cybersecurity analysts to try to attempt to perform threat validation. Again, this is done manually using existing threat intelligence, and they do make a best effort at trying to determine whether a threat is real or not. If they've determined a threat is real, then what they will do is move to attack mitigation. And again, leveraging the same security experts and human expertise, what they do is they adjust the threat prevention architecture to combat the identified attack. So we're left with a process that leaves a lot to be desired. Threat detection is simply not accurate. It produces a large number of hits that could be a large number of false positives. And the threat validation and mitigation processes rely on a manual and slow functions. Often what they just serve to do is close the barn door after the horse is already bolted. And don't just take our word for the existing situation. If we take a look at some of the sort of high-level quotes from leading analysts, what we see, they amplify the same messages, that businesses will be forced to react by shifting their spending on cybersecurity. We see two major trends here. One is that businesses will be increasing spending in detection and response up from the current manual processes. And two, for the really complex issues, they can just no longer handle this adequately themselves and will be investing in external, really expert security expertise to help them deal with problems that they won't be able to handle. So to summarize the existing situation, from a business perspective, businesses have an overarching need to be secured, to maintain their cybersecurity, but as we see, they are struggling to perform this effectively at an affordable cost. And going back to our original survey question, 82% of the respondents would agree with that particular statement. At this stage, I will hand over to John Loveland from Verizon, who will give his perspective on the business and how they're handling it at Verizon. Thank you.
Jonathan, thanks so much, and thanks for having me here today. I guess I want to start a little bit, or at the outset, I want to speak a bit to what, kind of complementing what Jonathan said, are some of the trends that we're seeing in the market as well, and why we're bullish on the opportunities for outsourcing of managed services, and why we've invested quite a bit of money. For those of you, perhaps particularly outside of the U.S., that aren't familiar with Verizon, we're a Fortune 20 global provider of communications and connectivity solutions. Most in the States know us for our wireless services, but we have a very large and robust enterprise-focused offering, and of which our managed security solutions is a critical component. So some of the trends that we're seeing and trying to capitalize on at Verizon are that we're seeing that security is increasingly being thought of more as a business enabler as opposed to a cost center. And that's because cybersecurity is becoming increasingly more strategic for companies. It's interesting as I reflect back on sort of kind of how we got to where we are today. It seems that a couple of years ago, a few years ago, that one of the key turning points was the Sony breach. And we saw how that really raised the attention of the senior executive team in terms of the critical importance of cybersecurity in protecting the brand, protecting intellectual property, protecting the reputation of the company itself. And it really moved beyond sort of the focus around securing PII, which remains important, but really getting to overall protecting the bottom line of the company. As cybersecurity has become more strategic, companies are increasingly applying traditional methods of enterprise risk management against their cybersecurity asset or cybersecurity investments. And so they're looking at not just how do I ensure compliance with the various regs that are out there or frameworks, ensure adherence system frameworks, but how do I ensure that my cybersecurity spend is actually reducing the risk I face as an organization and reducing the exposure. So we see that going forward, this becomes increasingly more important, right? As we start to move into new models of delivering services to customers via things like IoT and software as a service and increasingly more and more mobile communication applications, security continues to increase in strategic importance to companies. At the same time, there are a lot of headways in terms of companies being able to bring that capability in-house. One is you've got a critical gap in skills shortage, trained cybersecurity resources. You've got an evolving threat landscape that makes it increasingly difficult for individual companies to keep up with the threats that they face. And clearly, you want to leverage the knowledge and insights not only gleaned from your own environment, but across sort of a wider portfolio of companies. And being able to do that as an individual entity is becoming increasingly more difficult. So threats are increasing rapidly. Control and compliance costs are constant challenges. And really, at the end of the day, where we're seeing the opportunities as companies want to take advantage of increasingly more digitization, virtualization, and opportunities to transfer the operations and the cost to a third-party provider. So going to the next slide here, some of you may be familiar with Verizon via our data breach investigations report that we've been publishing now for 10 years. That's actually a 2015 cover. I'm not sure how I made it onto this slide. But we've been leading the way in helping companies identify the evolving nature of and changing threats in the market from a cybersecurity perspective. And one of the things that we've seen, and this is as true today as it was the last couple of years ago, is that you can really begin to bucket the different types of threats that organizations face into certain incident patterns. And these 9 incident patterns we've seen be consistent over the last couple of years. 90% of all the incidents we collected, and it came from a variety of about 80 different sources, some public sources, a lot of our proprietary information off of our network, as well as data feeds that we've built over the years that will feed us information about incidents and natures of attack. You can really look at these 9 incident categories as representative of most of the attacks that companies face. So moving from that, then you can see that the other statistic we've used in the past is that there remains a gap between the time to compromise and the time to discover these threats. So oftentimes these threats exist in the network for a long period of time before they're discovered. And closing that gap between the time to compromise and the time in which these breaches are discovered is a key focus, and ought to be a key focus of any security efforts. The other aspect that we've all come to realize over the last few years or so is that there's a gap between the types of threats that can be detected by using threat signatures to that unknown types of attacks, where that can be only detected via behavior analytics or by working further up the kill chain to understand the types of reputations and the connectivity of the different types of attacks that exist out there. So what we've seen is an increasing focus on leveraging threat intelligence into managed security services. So this is clearly not new territory for a lot of people. We've been talking about threat intelligence for some time, but we're seeing a migration from in terms of sophistication on the part of our customers and the service that they provide, from tactical raw intelligence to enriched and increasingly adaptive intelligence. So it's not just about identifying the different threats that exist out there in the wild, but then how do you then translate that and communicate that back to the SOC so that they can take adaptive response against the security assets and improve the security posture of the company. So that's where we've been focused a lot of our time and investment, and we think that increasingly that's the trend, is how do you leverage threat intelligence in an increasingly more sophisticated way to create a more adaptive response, adaptive security posture, then begin to infuse behavior analytics and other artificial intelligence to really start to identify those threats that can't be predicted, and then be able to take increasingly more responsive action. And that's really the purview and the opportunity for managed security services providers going forward. So I'll sum it up by saying that, in general, the role of a managed security services provider is helping our customers improve their threat visibility, helping them obviously mitigate the risk by quickly responding to that intel as they're uncovered, simplifying compliance. But again, compliance is only one aspect of overall security mitigation. You ought to be reducing the overall exposure, but clearly reducing the complexity, and then finally optimizing the spend. So this gets back to looking at security as more of a enterprise risk issue versus an IT risk, and helping companies, and companies ought to be thinking about how they leverage threat intelligence and cybersecurity to really optimize their spending. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to ECI for the next part of the presentation, and we'll pull up the next slide. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you. So the good guys cannot keep up with the bad guys. That's what we have had. And we have also seen the iceberg, that the intelligence on the intelligence end at work. And we can clearly see that, the zero-day attacks are on a rise. And the signature technologies, the IPS signatures, the anti-malware signatures, and other signatures becoming less and less effective in order to identify an attack. And the majority of the intelligence may come from a threat behavior or from various sources that indicates including threat and reputation databases that feed into the systems, the cybersecurity systems. So I would like actually to speak a bit about the better way of combating cybersecurity. So in order to have an effective cybersecurity, what is required is, first of all, a significantly improving the accuracy of attack detection and automating the threat validation and response processes. There is a need also to have a flexible security architecture that can accommodate additional security tools as required. Important to move from a silo security prevention tools to an orchestrated security architecture, and to reduce the business involvement in managing its security by making available a superior and affordable managed cybersecurity services, which includes cybersecurity monitoring and emergency response. And all of this can be achieved with an innovative approach. So if we have seen earlier that the current solution is composed out of 3 steps, let's speak a bit about the first step, the threat detection. So threat detection can be done in a much more innovative approach. And it leverages, first of all, highly granular network transaction metadata, including applications, application types, endpoint devices, operating system, and additional information that altogether enables to create traffic fingerprinting and baselining through a continuous learning process. Then, on that traffic, you can identify anomalies for multiple attack use cases, whatever they are, volumetric attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, and so forth. Then, you can correlate events that are generated by the security architecture with these anomalies, and finally, validating of multiple events all together in a real-time forensics fashion in order to identify a threat. The second phase is the threat validation. And here, there is a way to automate the process, and this is actually what we do. These threats are validating automatically against threat and reputation databases as well as open source intelligence. And the third step, the attack mitigation, again, here we would use automation through the selection of the right tool, the right prevention tool out of the Swiss Army knife from the cybersecurity arsenal, then updating the mitigation policies to reflect, to combat the attack, and to redirect the attack traffic to the security tool. And that way, we would achieve cybersecurity mitigation in real time. Let's talk a bit about the ECI LightSECT cybersecurity solution. So the LightSECT cybersecurity solution that implements the process that we spoke earlier is composed out of 2 elements or products. The first one is the LightSECT SHIELD, which protects every business location, and the LightSECT Compass, which delivers centralized multi-tenant attack detection and automated attack mitigation. Let's drill a bit into the LightSECT SHIELD. The LightSECT SHIELD basically leverages an NFV architecture and is composed out of 4 types of elements: sensors, algorithms, traffic control, and mitigation security tools. The sensors, including deep packet inspection and NetFlow for transporting these KPIs. The algorithms, which includes or leveraging network behavior analysis in order to identify security breaches. Then a service software control service function chaining, which is driven by deep packet inspection that redirects the traffic to the exact mitigation tool. This is actually software controlled from the LightSEC Compass, and an extensible suite of mitigation functions, including firewall, IPS, anti-malware, anti-bot, anti-phishing, and additional tools that leverages best-of-breed prevention tool. And all of this architecture is extendable. Going into the LightSEC Compass, LightSEC Compass is the focus of implementing the innovative automated and orchestrated security architecture, and it provides a centralized multi-tenant cybersecurity management and eliminate the guesswork in identifying and managing cybersecurity threats. Let's talk a bit about the solution deployment. And here you may see these businesses at the left side that are connect over an access aggregation network into a service provider data center from there to the pre-ring providers. So the first implementation or deployment of the LightSEC Shield solution is at the customer access as part of the Universal Customer's Premises Equipment, or UCPE. In this case, the UCPE is shipped by the service provider, self-installed by the customer, and it is provisioned, managed, and monitored through the network. The whole management of these LightSEC solution is orchestrated or NFV orchestrated from the service provider cloud. The LightSEC Shield can also be deployed as a multi-tenant solution in a service provider data center. Here it uses VPN tunnels to redirect all traffic from the customer premises to the data center or the point of presence based LightSEC Shield solution. And the LightSEC Compass, as a centralized part of the solution, is deployed at the service provider data center.
Try and do it. We're pushing this slide to the audience. I don't know if it looks...
It looks fine.
Okay, I will go on. So now a service provider can leverage this deployment arrangement to offer 3 tiers of services. All of these services are delivered by the service providers, and they might be managed either by the business or by the service provider. As Tier 1, we offer security as a service, which provide a comprehensive cybersecurity suite of best-in-breed attack prevention tools. Tier 2 delivers Security Operating Center as a service, which provides real-time reporting of verified threats against your business and automatic adjustment of attack prevention tool settings. And Tier 3, which delivers emergency response team as a service, which uses human cybersecurity experts to provide real-time supervision of the security operating center as a service. And it delivers all the expertise of the dedicated security analyst at an affordable cost, 24/7. Let's look at the overall architecture from the endpoint business customer perspective. The business customer would log into the service provider, self-manage, web portal, and choose from these three-tier services the security services that best matches the business need. Subscription invoices would come as normal with the monthly bills, and the businesses can fine-tune their security configuration whenever they wish. Managed cybersecurity services is a true win-win for both the business customer and the service provider. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I'll just wrap up this section over here to talk about why, in fact, it's a real win-win. And this is something which is great when you have this in our business. So just to summarize, what's in it for the businesses, the enterprises, and the small and medium businesses? Well, for one, they're getting highly effective security. What they're getting is a system which does detect multidimensional attacks, and it automatically adjusts the security measures in real time to combat them, something they're not getting today. It's hassle-free, which means it's delivered as a service, so it eliminates the need for companies to invest in and maintain directly their own security infrastructure and deal with deployment and ongoing maintenance issues. It's worry-free because, as Yaron described, it's backed up by a team of cybersecurity experts within the service provider operations center. And finally, it's affordable. It needs to be affordable, and it will be affordable. So, and one reason for that is because this can be delivered in conjunction with the existing broadband connection that you as a business are already paying for. So it's a value-added service, if you like, on top of that broadband connection, monitoring the streams of traffic as they flow through it. At the same time, it provides a whole series of benefits to the service providers themselves. You are confident that you can provide your customers with superior protection. So it's the corollary, if you like, of the benefits to the businesses. It can be operated with low total cost of operation, again, because it's being built on top of the broadband connection that you are already providing to customers. It could be provided, again, based on an NFV-type architecture, which is proving to be a very cost-efficient architecture, perhaps in conjunction with a universal customer premises equipment type of approach, which can be deployed, if you like, either at the customer premises or in a multi-tenant solution within your own network. And again, this is being shown as being the leading use case for network function virtualization, both on the basis of the benefits and its proven cost. It provides an operational fit based on the fact that it's employing a standards-based architecture that integrates smoothly with your existing portals and operation systems. And then finally, just to reemphasize the win-win business case, if it's good for your customer, it's good for yourself. For a modest investment, you get a quick return on that investment, you add new revenue streams, and perhaps most importantly, you increase the stickiness with your most important business customers. So this summarizes our presentation part of this, and I will hand back to Ray right now, I think, for a closing question and to wrap this up with a Q&A.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Great insights there, both from ECI in terms of what's possible and also from John at Verizon, showing us how the market is progressing and the trends we're seeing there. Now, having gone through those presentations and seen those perspectives, I want now to introduce our second audience poll question to tie in with some of that. So the question is, can managed security services using virtual network functions meet the cybersecurity needs of SMBs? So can managed security services using VNFs meet the cybersecurity needs of small and medium-sized businesses? So again, we have 4 options. So take a look at the options, weigh up which one you think best meets or suits your idea on this, and vote. And we'll take a look at the results in just a moment. And just a reminder here, and now that you've heard the various presentations, if you have any questions to ask of our guest speakers today from ECI and Verizon, please do use the Q&A tool that you have to put these questions, because we'll be coming to the audience Q&A in just a moment. And I can see now we've really got quite a few questions flooding in right now. So let's take a look at how you voted in this second audience poll question. So the question was, can managed security services using virtual network functions meet the cybersecurity needs of small and medium-sized businesses? Okay, so there's a really very clear overall response here from today's audience, because more than 58% of today's audience has answered possibly, but it will require significant market education. So managed security services using VNFs can meet the cybersecurity needs of SMBs, but it's going to require significant market education. That's more than 58%. Clearly, the second most popular answer here is nearly 38%, saying that yes, this is the optimum solution as long as it's affordable. And that was a point made there by Jonathan a few minutes ago, that the affordability part of this is incredibly important. Only 4.2% of today's audience said it's unlikely that managed security services using VNFs will meet the cybersecurity needs of SMBs because SMBs are too conservative. So that's pretty interesting. Nearly very few people on today's webinar think that the SMBs won't take the VNF option, and absolutely nobody on today's webinar thinks this is just smoke and mirrors. So that's kind of good to know. Jonathan, if I can ask you first, that's a very high percentage for the significant market education still being required. Is that higher or lower, or about what you expected?
I think we're talking about SMBs over here. So with SMBs in particular, since they're focused so much on their business, probably it does require a higher degree of market education. So I'm not really surprised by that. They've been indoctrinated for years by the various IT solution providers that this is how they have to implement their cybersecurity. Now that they want to hand over this to a third-party player, I think they just require a little bit of education. But we've seen this take place over time, and certainly the overall shift of applications to the cloud is going to help that process along immensely. Okay, excellent. And John from Verizon, does this response audience poll result today, is this in line with what you would expect?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually at Verizon have created a new division that's focused on SMBs that leverages virtualization and managed services, because we feel like that is directionally where most SMBs need to go from a security, just given the capital constraints, just as well as the sort of skills shortage in terms of being able to provide effective security.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for voting, and thanks, Jonathan, John, for those perspectives. So this now brings us to the Q&A section of today's webinar, and thanks everybody for sending in questions for today's expert speakers. Now, there is one particular question that I want to start with, which is something that always crops up when there's any new technology being implemented to deliver services, and that is how do new technologies become integrated and work alongside existing solutions. So we have a question here about how to phase in current point solutions, current point security solutions into a managed solution, and can they both coexist in parallel? Can we have a managed solution and a point solution existing alongside each other? So Jonathan, is that something that you have a view on?
I'm going to hand this off to our cybersecurity expert here, Yaron.
Right, okay, you're on.
All right, so basically, let's say security, there is nothing like there is enough security. And the solution, the managed security solution, can definitely coexist with multiple additional security tools. There is a question whether the additional tools can be orchestrated all together, because let's say we said that we believe that the cybersecurity should move away from a silent security to an orchestrated approach. But the LightSECT Compass solution that we described is basically, it's an open architecture. And potentially it includes plugins that allow us to integrate with additional security tools and to manage them all together. Of course, it's going to be a process. The security architecture, as we have described it, basically, it's based on a certain security architecture which is well known to us. But, you know, the basic question, whether, you know, additional security tools may coexist, definitely yes. To be orchestrated together, this is a process.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sure that's something that will evolve over time, particularly as everybody gains more experience of these parallel solutions actually in the marketplace. Okay, another question here from today's audience. How elastic is the setup when the client has an architecture of scaling up and down their bandwidth needs? So, you know, there's a greater opportunities for enterprises to be scaling up and down their bandwidth capabilities. How elastic are these managed security services in those situations? Is that a question that Jonathan or Yaron, you want to take on?
Yeah, let me also drop on this one. We have discussed two deployment solutions, one as a UCP and the other one at a data center. At a data center, definitely, you know, scaling up and down, this is pretty easy. You can add resources into the LightSECT solution because you are in a data center and you can add more resources for every tenant and scale pretty easily. On the UCPE side, basically what we do, we over-provision, meaning that we're delivering a hardware which is, in essence, this is actually a normal x86 white box that basically is over-provisioned, which means that you can scale up to a certain level, and you can scale up in two dimensions. One is, let's say, more bandwidth, and the other one is more services. Because, let's say, we also expect that over time, there will be new security tools because, let's say, the security landscape evolves. And with the evolution of the threat landscape, there are new tools that are required. You know, just 3 years ago, 4 years ago, sandboxing technology and zero-day was not really evolved. And in the last several days, everybody are aware of the 0 days and the needs for sandboxing and additional tools in order to combat malware. So this is actually the two options that each service provider needs to consider when he selects a UCPE solution or a solution which is at the POP or at the data center.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Yaron. And John, from Verizon's experience, what's your perspective here?
In terms of the scalability of the network?
Yeah.
And the importance? Well, I think there's, you know, that's really where, you know, we see the future going with software-defined networking and virtualization, right, is being able to provide lower total cost of ownership and providing those custom solutions that can be deployed on demand to the scale at which they're required by the customer, right? So I'd say there's kind of two aspects. One is the network and be able to provide that scalability. The other is be able to provide scalability with respect to security resources. And I think that where managed services are going from a security perspective is around providing those solutions to the customers when they need them the most, right? You're obviously going to have a base layer of security, but depending on sort of the threat environment, you may need to provide more solutions and services, more response to the customer when they need them. So there's kind of two aspects of this virtualization around scalability. One is the network and one is the security solutions you provide. And I think managed services providers need to be able to provide sort of that scale up around on the security events to meet the threats that increase, and customers, you need to have pricing models to account for that.
Right. So that's a very interesting point you ended on there, the pricing models. And I think this is another, when it comes to new sort of next generation, if you like, types of services, what kind of impact has the introduction of virtualization and cloud type services had on the business models that service providers are able to offer to their customers, to their managed service customers?
Well, again, I think it just goes back to you're able to have a sort of wider variety of customized pricing models, right, or delivery models to the customers. And I think the question earlier about managing sort of multiple environments and hybrid solutions, we're seeing that happen quite often, especially as the enterprises, as the size and scope of the activities the enterprises we serve increases. That clients already have certain devices and capabilities from a security management perspective, and so they want us to provide more hybridization. So a good example of that is co-managed SIM platforms, where customers have purchased their own SIM, but they realize that they don't have the ability to operate that SIM or really make it deliver the value that was promised, and so they want someone like a Verizon to come in and help them manage that. So with virtualization and with some of these hybrid solutions, we're able to create more flexible, customizable pricing options for our customers. So it just gives us, the ability to deliver the solution that the customer wants and get that rapidly deployed and price it in a way that makes sense and fits with their budget. Okay.
So it sounds like there's a much greater opportunity here to deliver customer-friendly and enhance the customer experience in terms of the security services that are available and on offer to enterprises of all types. So would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's well said.
Okay, great. Now, in terms of, we've also got a question here from the audience, and looking at the time, well, we've reached the hour point already, so we might have to call this one as the last question today. So we've got a question about costs coming in, but at this point, if I can just point you to the fact that the survey is currently showing on your screen. These audience surveys are very important for us to be able to tailor the webinars to meet your needs. So if you can take a minute, please, to fill in that survey, that would be very useful. And also, we have had a flood of questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes here, just to let you know that all of the questions coming in from the audience today are all kept and are available to be responded to by our experts offline. So if we haven't got to your question today, that question isn't lost. So we do have a really important question here, which is about the cost of security services, and that's something we heard about earlier in the webinar. So the question is, does the cost of security just carry on increasing every year? Does the cost of security just rise annually? So I'd like to put that to both to get that from the ECI and the Verizon perspective. So from ECI first.
Okay, so let's say as long as the security services that are delivered are more or less the same, so of course this is actually a subscription service, and I would not expect that for these services that the cost will be raised. But definitely, this is actually a very dynamic word, and we're speaking here about new threats and new mitigation tools and detection tools and so forth. So I would expect that, there will be additional needs and requirements that potentially will be ended up with additional modules and functions and capabilities and services that are delivered to the customer.
Right. Okay. And John, so it sounds like what we're getting is greater flexibility, a larger number of options that makes it much easier for enterprises to be able to pick the managed service that best suits them.
Yeah, I think the other way to say this is, and we've seen this a lot with services, while capabilities may become more complex and companies may need to invest more, I think what we've seen sort of historically when it comes to all sorts of, if you would call, IT services as well as cybersecurity services, you end up getting more for less, or about the same amount of money at least. So, companies are investing more today because of the complexity, but if you're sharing this complexity across many customers with a managed solution, what you're able to do now is to start to spread those particular costs and actually offer better services for less money.
Okay.
Yeah.
And John, from the Verizon perspective, would you agree with that kind of analysis?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to answer this question, right? I mean, I think in general, from a global economic perspective, it's pretty easy to anticipate that overall spending on cybersecurity is going to increase. I do think, though, at the individual company, individual enterprise level, we're entering a period of technology rationalization. There's been a lot of money that's been spent. The joke about the CISO getting the blank check to go to RSA and buy the latest and greatest gear, but ultimately not reducing the risk or the exposure of the company. So as this becomes more of an enterprise risk issue, less of an IT risk issue, and more of an enterprise risk issue. Right. Then you're going to start to see real technology rationalization. How do I get the best bang for the buck for my security mitigation? How do I leverage cyber insurance policies more effectively to offset that risk that I can't eliminate by my own spending? So I think that it's hard to quantify whether it goes up or whether it goes down, but I do think we're going to see, with new solution providers, outsourced solution providers out there, we're entering a period of technology rationalization. So it's no longer how do I continue to build bigger and thicker walls, but how do I ensure that I'm getting real risk reduction and exposure elimination in my spending.
Okay, great, excellent. So, John, thanks very much for that. And I think at this point we're over our time, so we're going to have to call it a day there. Like I said, these questions do get stored and can be answered offline. So I'd just like to, at this point, thank you, the audience, for joining us today for what is a really critical topic in this industry. Thank you for sending in your questions and participating in the audience poll. And also, I would like to thank our expert speakers, Jonathan and Yoram from ECI and John from Verizon, from giving us the benefits of their experience and their insights on today's webinar. So thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much to the speakers. And from me, Ray Lemaitre at Light Reading, that's the end of today's webinar, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.